What's up, everyone? So we asked our followers on Twitter what they wanted our very first video to be about, and the results came in, and it's symptoms of depression. So that's what we're gonna discuss today. Now, the first thing that I really want to point out is that depression does not discriminate. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, how much money you make, or what you do for a living. Depression can affect anybody and everybody. In fact, globally, it already affects more than 300 million people. So obviously, this is something that we need to bring awareness to, that we need to evaluate, that we need to understand so we can all move forward and reach our greatest potential. I'm gonna go over a checklist today with you, and this is by David Burns. He's a professor at Harvard University, and this is out of his book, Feeling Good. Now, this is a checklist that my therapist shared with me and that we went over when I first started going to therapy. It's a series of 15 questions, and you rank it between 0 to 3, and 0 being not at all to 3 being all the time, as far as how you feel it, how you think about it, whatever it may be. I feel like it's very important to share this with you today because for me, it was a very pivotal moment. I realized the severity of the depression that I was dealing with and the changes that I really need to make to move forward. Otherwise, I was just in my head all the time. So you can get out a pen and paper, or you can just listen. At the end of talking about these 15 symptoms, I will have a screenshot of the results so you can pause the video, tally up your numbers, and be able to see where you range, whether it's little to no depression to severe depression. Now remember to rank each question from 0 to 3. Now 0 is going to be not at all. 1 is going to be sometimes. 2 is going to be it's pretty moderate, and 3 is going to be it's all the time. So going into symptom 1, sadness. Have you noticed that you've been down in the dumps lately, that you've been just really randomly sad, maybe even having some cry spells? Those cry spells happen a lot when you're dealing with the grieving process. Randomly, just something reminds, or even not always, but those cry spells just come out of nowhere. 2, discouragement. Have you noticed that you're very discouraged by life right now, that it's very kind of hopeless how the future is going to pan out? 3, low self-esteem. Do you feel worthless? Do you feel like you are a failure? 4, inferiority. Have you noticed that you feel inadequate to others, inferior to others? 5, guilt. Have you been very self-critical of yourself? Have you noticed that perhaps you're saying sorry for everything, even if it's not your fault, but you just feel really down on yourself and you blame yourself for everything? 6, indecisiveness. Have you noticed you're having a pretty hard time trying to make any decisions? 7, irritability and frustration. Have you noticed that you are being a little resentful lately, or maybe very resentful lately, very angry, easily angered? 8, loss of interest in life. Have you noticed that you kind of have lost interest in that career you've been pursuing? Perhaps you have lost interest in hobbies you usually are so passionate about. Maybe you've even lost interest in family and friends. Number 9, motivation. Have you lost motivation in daily routines? Perhaps getting out of bed has been a challenge. Doing anything, it seems like you're overwhelmed because, you know, the ending just seems so far away that the motivation just isn't there. 10, poor self-image. Have you noticed that you've been kind of critical of yourself as your image? When you look in the mirror, do you feel like you are unattractive? Maybe the way that you're even speaking about yourself to others is in a very negative way. 11, appetite changes. Have you noticed that maybe you are not hungry at all? Or perhaps maybe you're overeating and binging compulsively. 12, sleep changes. Have you noticed that you're having a hard time sleeping at night and suffering from insomnia? Or perhaps you're sleeping too much and you're always too tired. 13, loss of libido. Have you noticed that you have kind of lost interest in sex? Perhaps you and your partner are pretty physical, but lately it just has not been the case. And if this is so, then it's important to communicate that with your partner, to let them know that the depression is a factor in that. 14, hypochondriac tendencies. Have you noticed that you've been worrying about your health a lot lately? Always thinking that something wrong and something bad is going to happen? And number 15, suicidal impulses. Have you noticed that you feel like life is not worth living or that this world is better off without you? So take a moment, tally up your numbers, and pause the video at this screenshot so you can see where you kind of range, whether it's minimal to no depression or it's severe depression. When I took this test back in 2015, I was ranked with severe depression. And honestly, it was very dehumanizing for myself. You know, I was very discouraged. I remember talking to my boss on the phone afterwards because I was going to have to stop working for a few months. And she had actually dealt with it prior too. So she had had a similar mindset from similar situations she's dealt with in the past. So she had reminded me that there is that light at the end of the tunnel, and she told me, you know, Brittney, you just gotta realize that it does get better. And at the time, I'm gonna be completely honest and say I did not see that light at the end of the tunnel. I honestly felt nothing because I was at that suicidal point, you know, those suicidal thoughts of thinking that this world would be better without me. And, you know, so there didn't really seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel. What I learned is that I had to ignite that fire myself. And taking this test really was a pivotal moment in my life to really get myself back on track. What I want everyone to remember is that sometimes it's okay to not be okay. We're all on a different journey. We all have a different path. And at times, sometimes we trail off. Sometimes we take those side trails without even realizing it. But what's important is that we are self-aware and that we realize what's going on, we evaluate it, and we realize that there are people that can relate and there are people that are willing to help, and that we have to take those resources and use them and utilize them and work through it so that way we can get ourselves back on track, back on our journey to reach our greatest potential. If you feel like you've ranked pretty high on this test, I would recommend start researching a psychologist as a therapist. There are many different types of therapists. I like a psychologist because they tend to evaluate circumstances from your childhood to adulthood, things that are going on in your life right now, instead of just saying, okay, well, here's a prescription, let's see if this works. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this on a note to self, that you matter, that you're worth it, and that you are not alone.